Zemor le David, Adonai roi lo exar, vino de Shear Mitzeini, Halemei Menuchot, Yen Aleini, Nafshi Eshovev, Yanecheni V'maklei tzedek Lemon Shemo, Am Kielek V'geitz al Mavet, Lo Idara Ki Ata Imadi, Shivtecha Umishanetecha Ema Yenachamuni, Tarach Lefanai Shulchan Neged Zorerai, Dishan Tavashem en Roshi Kosi Revaya, Achtov Vachesed Yodifuni Kol Yemei Chayai, Veshavti Bebeit Adonai Leorech Yamim. The words of the 23rd Psalm. Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. Giving me repose in green meadows, leading me beside the still waters to revive my spirit, guiding me on the right path, for that is God's essence. Though I walk through a valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod comfort me. You prepare a banquet for me in the presence of my foes. You anoint my head with oil, my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness shall be my portion all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. So we are gathered here this afternoon, sadly to say goodbye to George Keives, of blessed memory, Gedalia ben Akiva Belea, Zichrono Livracha, the son of Kiva and Lily Keives, of blessed memory, the husband of the late Anita Keives, of blessed memory, the brother Philip Keives, of blessed memory, Ted Keives, of blessed memory, and Sophie Alfenbein, of blessed memory. The father of Lorne Keives, of blessed memory, and also the father of Gary and Kim Keives, Norma Keives, and Rick and Cindy Keives. The grandfather of Nina, Nico, Andrew, and Jeremy. The great-grandfather of Alex, Connor, and Charlotte. George passed away on Monday, March 25th, peacefully, at the age of 95. When you think of a typical Jewish occupation, I'm pretty sure farmer comes pretty near the bottom of the list. Jews, we usually imagine, are an urban people specializing in commercial and professional pursuits. And there is a good deal of truth to the stereotype. In many periods and places, Jews were forbidden to own land in Europe. They clustered instead in occupations like finance and trade, where they could benefit from their international contacts and high levels of literacy. By the time Zionism arose in the late 19th century, The alienation of Jews from the land was a major theme in the movement's reform program. In the land of Israel, Jews reacquired the rural character they had lost in exile. So much of the Talmud is about nothing but the land and working the land. The rules about planting and harvesting are laid out in great detail. Today we are saying goodbye to George Keives, blessed memory, a proud farmer who remained connected to the land during his whole life. Even on times where his peers abandoned farming to pursue other endeavors away from the rural life. And the rabbis are teaching us that we should learn at least two very important lessons from the farmers. And I believe we can learn these same lessons in the life of the late George Keives of blessed memory. Lesson number one that we learn from a farmer: commitment. Farming is a way of life, a lifelong commitment. It's not a typical job where you can give your 2 weeks notice and walk away. When you farm, you're connected to a specific land and you have invested in expensive equipment, a community, and in George's case, to previous generations of your family who have farmed there before you. In other words, there is a deep roots, big picture perspective required. The big picture is this: the farmer is attached to his work for a lifetime, and he works his land with the yearly harvest ever before him. Every investment in equipment, every decision regarding the precise planting time, every weed uprooted, all of it is done with the harvest in mind. In other words, if you want to learn what true commitment is, look at the life of a farmer, look at the life of George Keives, blessed memory. And the lesson number two that a rabbi said we should learn from farmers is very simple: faith. Farming is a risky work. There aren't any guarantees. Weather can't be controlled. All that labor, all that grime, all that waiting, and we still depend on good weather conditions. Farming is a reminder that, like the harvest, everything in life belongs to God. These are wonderful traits represented in the life of George. But George was much more than a proud and successful farmer. But today, we are lucky that first Gary, one of George's sons, agreed to share with us a few words about his father to further honor George's life. Gary.
Friends, family, first I want to thank everybody for having come here today. Our father, I'm Gary. I'm the oldest son of George. You know, our father was a very simple but a very complex man. He was born in Turkey. He lived there until he was 4, when he came with my grandparents and my Aunt Sophie, and they came to Canada in 1927, just in time to take part in the Great Depression. And there was, very little social safety net back then. My father became a perfectionist, but that was as long as he made the rules. And everything had to be organized, but it had to be organized in a certain and very precise way. As the rabbi said, our father was really a skilled farmer. And I remember as we were growing up that his crops were always much more yield than any of the surrounding people. But that's because he used to just bury himself in weather reports and wind reports and moisture reports. And um, when I was little, we didn't have electricity as you know it here with lights. We had a battery and a bulb. But we used to have to not listen, not read, and save that battery so he could hear the weather reports. He was really, he was very skilled at mechanical things. He was also proud that his farm machinery was in tip-top shape and even taught himself things like how to weld critical parts. Um, he could build cabinets and cupboards. He once doubled the size of the house, the one on the farm, not the one here. 1940, he was in Saskatoon at the University of Saskatchewan studying engineering, and he was also in the officer training program for the Army. Then my grandfather became very ill, and my dad was recalled back to the farm to kind of save the farm and keep things going. He was hardworking beyond belief. Um, he would toil through the night. When it came planting or harvesting, it was just nonstop, 24/7. Um, Within the the Sonnenfeld community in Saskatchewan, he was very active in the community and in synagogue life. And for many years, he was the president of the congregation. Those of you who had a chance to go see him in recent years, and especially at the Sharon home, noticed his paintings and how prominent that synagogue in Saskatchewan was and what a great job he did on it. If you saw it, you'll notice that the most of the synagogue is white, but there's one wall that's brown. I said, Father, what happened there? He said, well, we ran out of money to buy paint, so we painted what we could. He had a number of inventions, and he had some patents. Of course, he made enormous sacrifices for his children, us, giving us a better life, coming to Winnipeg so we could have better schools than the farm school in Saskatchewan. Um, the education was important. In fact, my sister Norma was even able to go to parrot school. All that made my parents so proud. They really liked that. But as a result, our parents spent long periods of time apart from each other. Dad would be on the farm in Saskatchewan, and Mom would be here in Winnipeg with the kids. And of course, in the summer, when school was out, we all lived and worked on the farm. Our dad loved Canadian football. In fact, Ricky tells me that when he had some really heated games, he heard him cheering all the way down in Minneapolis. Unfortunately, in recent years, he hasn't been able to really see or watch the football because his eyesight got so down that he couldn't watch the TV, and then his hearing went down, so he couldn't hear. And that makes it really hard to watch those games. He got both of those. He lost his eyesight and his hearing due to the farming because working outside in the elements. There were no cabs on machines in those days. You just sat there in the cold, the heat, the dust. That's how it was. I once asked him, I said, how did it come about that you made the change from horses to tractors on the first farm? And he said, well, it was really very simple. He said, I told my dad if he didn't buy a tractor, I was quitting. He was not going to farm with horses. He wanted to be very, very modern. And so he sent my grandfather out to buy a tractor. My grandfather, of course, a little bit on the frugal side, bought the smallest tractor he could find. And it was a pretty nice tractor until when you hooked the implement onto the hitch, the front wheels would lift up. So that had to be remedied. Our parents, for many, many years, my dad retired at about 65. And for the next 30 years, they loved to travel. They had a number of motorhomes, and they would just go without an agenda. Just say, we're going to Nova Scotia, or at least that's what I remember. And going here, going there, um, coming to Minneapolis. They went to Israel. They went to Mexico. They went to Alaska. They went to Hawaii, and a thousand points in between. That was amazing. After our mother passed, here's a man who has never fetched his own cup of coffee in his whole life. And suddenly he decided he wanted to live alone. He wanted to be independent. He wanted to stay in his house. And he taught himself how to run the house. He taught himself how to go shopping. Um, Esther to help with shopping. He taught himself how to figure out recipes and how to cook for himself. He was especially proud of his meatloaf. That's a big one. So I could stand here and talk for days, but he was wonderful. He had a good run, and that's all there's to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. I would like to invite now Norma to come forward to eulogize her father.
I am Norma Ruth, youngest child of George. My dad was many things to many people. My father had a lot of natural ability. He started playing softball at a very young age and became a star pitcher overnight. He played through high school on the junior and senior traveling team. One day he had a small altercation with the teacher along with two other teammates, and the three boys were benched. With a private meeting, the team decided if they don't play, we don't play. So what could the teacher do? She had to reinstate him. My father went on to pitch a winning game where they whopped the other team, and to boot, he scored himself a home run first time up at bats. That was my dad. He loved the game of baseball all his life, watched many, many World Series, and when him and my mother were in Palm Springs, they would go to the local training camp to watch the new and up and coming players. When I was about 8, my dad taught me signature pitch. And I went on to play ball all through high school as a pitcher, and I still have the trophy when my high school girls team won the tournament. When I was a teenager, my dad and I decided we'd break up the winter monotony and take a painting class together. Well, it didn't take me long to figure out painting was not my cup of tea, but it came to him so easily. Over the years, he perfected his talent. He painted from memory. He captured the history of the Jewish community. One of his paintings was photographed and is in a historical Jewish book. Some of his paintings were put on display at the Asper Center. People would rave about his talent, and he would say to me, "Do you really think they're that good?" And I would say, "Yes, Dad, they really are." When my dad was a young boy, his mother bought him a violin via the Eaton's catalog for a total cost of $3.98. There was a teacher at school that gave him a couple basic lessons, and after that, he was self taught. He would sit on the step of his childhood home and play, and his mother would be by his side singing. Over the years, he upgraded his instrument to a little better than the original, but he spent many hours enjoying making that violin sing. And I credit my little music ability to my father. My mother was the one and only love of his life. They started dating in 1945, and in July of 1946, he asked her to wear his ring, and she said yes. Just short of 3 months later, they were married, and throughout 57 years of marriage, my father's love for my mother was never faltering. They had a few moments here and there, but he loved her to his core. They did everything together. He was her protector, her provider, and her best friend. After her passing in 2004, he envisioned a memorial in her name. My mother loved flowers, and so became the Anita Molly Garden at the Simpkins Center. My dad wanted to share the love of his life with a beautiful portrait and flowers that many people could enjoy for years to come. On a good day, my dad could be a little bit challenging. People often say to me that I have a very strong personality, and I look at him and I smile and I say, I am my father's daughter. Being strong willed, we had a few differences of opinion over the years, and he was known to have a few rough edges, but some things that people didn't know about him. This is the man that gave cookies and milk to his Siberian Husky Chinook, and then after the dog laid on the couch to settle down for night, he would cover him with a blanket. The man that, while legally blind, would take the bus and then walk for blocks to go visit my mother at her gravesite, have a conversation with her, leave a few pebbles behind of remembrances, and his tears on the ground. The man that waited at the kitchen window was Primrose House for my car to arrive when I was making a visit, and stand at that same window with tears in his eyes. And it was time for me to leave. Being a father, he worried about my journey back every time, and I had to promise to make that check-in phone call so he knew I got home okay. My dad was many things to many people, but at the end of the day, it's just my dad. We all love him in our own ways. He left his mark on us and all the people that he touched, and he will be sadly, sadly missed.
Thank you, Norma, for your words. May the memory of George be a source of inspiration for everyone. Let us say, Amen. Please rise now for the memorial prayer, the El Malay Rahamim. El Malay Rahamim, Shohem Bameroimim, Hametze Menuchane Chona, Dachat Kampei, Hashehina, Vema'alot Kedoshim, Kedoshim Uteorim, Kezoyar Amazirim, Edni Shema, Edni Shemat, Gedalia ben Akimaveleya, שהלך לעולמו בעבור שאנו מתפללים בעד הצקרת נשמתו בגן עדן וגן עדן מנוחתו לכם על הרחמים. אז תראיו בסדר כנב לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים, החיים את נשמתו, אדוני ונחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו ונאמר Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of George Keives, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. In a few minutes, we're going to proceed in caravan fashion to the Keives Z Cemetery, located in the corner of Main Street and Armstrong. So as we are going in caravan fashion there, my request for you is to remember to turn on your four-way flashers to identify your car as part of the procession. And please remember to stop at red lights and stop signs. Immediately after burial, everybody is invited to participate of the meal of consolation that is going to be at the Viscount Court Hotel. This is 1670 Portage Avenue. Again, it's going to be immediately after the burial. And there will be no formal Shiva, and the family will come to daily minions at the Shari Zedek synagogue. And everybody is invited also to come there to visit with the family during or after the daily services. So at this point, I would like to ask the pallbearers to assume their places alongside the coffin, and everybody else, please rise. So if you have a coat or anything, this is the moment to put it on. We are going to proceed to the next stage. Again, please rise, everyone. We are going to proceed to the next stage.